Hey, everybody, and welcome. It is Monday at 7 o'clock, and we are in Newport Richey at WeBeamTV.com studio, and we are ready for our next episode of 62 Who Knew, our 33rd or 34th episode, or we're way up there into the 30s. Soon we'll be like McDonald's, over 10 billion served. It's just a matter of time. Anyway, we got a great show tonight, and we're going to get right to it. I didn't know what angle we were on, so I had to sneak a look, so you don't get to see our guest yet, but you will in a few minutes. We are welcoming back Mr. Colin Castle, who is the Executive Marketing Director of Home Instead Senior Care, who is the largest non-medical in-home senior care company in the country. We always have a blast when he's here, and he's going to show us some things tonight that are going to affect you no matter what part of life you're in, whether you're approaching 62, whether you have relatives, moms, dads, that age. It doesn't make a difference, your income bracket. I think what he's going to do tonight is going to touch a lot of lives, and we're going to have fun doing it. So we're going to get to it in just about 1 minute, but as always, to keep our audience growing, what is 62 Who Knew for those of you that are tuning in for the first time? What is 62 Who Knew? 62 Who Know is... So we don't redo things here, so you actually saw that and heard that. 62 Who Knew is a show about the double-edged sword, the mixed blessing of longer lifespans. It always amazes me that longer lifespans has not affected many people. They don't think it's affecting them yet. Do we have a big shot? No, we don't have a white shot yet. That's okay. But right now, when you make it to 62 in this country, just make it to 62, you have better than a 50-50 shot of making it to 90 years old and above. There is no doubt that in the last 20 to 30 years, medical science, medical breakthroughs, scientific breakthroughs have broken through barriers in the last 2 or 3 decades like never before. So my era of people, the baby boomers who are just turning 62, in fact, 19,000 people a day are turning 62 years old in the United States of America for the next 19 years. And about less than 1% of them are prepared to live to be in their 90s financially with a high quality of life. So that is what this show is about. We bring on people, as we are tonight, from the in-home care world, from the annuity world, from the Social Security world, long-term care insurance, Medicare supplements, life insurance. In the next months to come, we are going to be bringing on travel agents to talk about cruising and other things that people do after the age of 62. And all our 62 Who Knew viewers are going to be getting big discounts. We're doing all sorts of great stuff. Last week, we brought on Legal Shield, so our thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of viewers could have affordable legal care when they need it. That's our goal here, to help you get to 62 and then make it the next 30 years with a high quality of life. So right now we're going to go, and first we're going to say hello, which I usually do in the very beginning, to my co-host, Nada. Oh, are we switching? No, we're not switching yet. Switch the camera. Co-host Nada, what's happening? Welcome. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Considering we just saw each other 2 minutes ago, nothing new. Since I'm fine since we walked in together a few minutes ago. And of course, here is our guest, officially for the third time,
yes.
Unofficially for the second time, Mr. Colin Castle. Thank you for coming back.
It was my pleasure.
We really did have a great show 3 weeks ago. I think it was the 3rd, March 3rd. Mm-hmm. I'm almost sure. And it really was. We got done and went, wow, that is going to be incredible. And unfortunately, the only people that saw it was the 3 of us and our producer, John Gaston, the owner of WeBeam TV, and our good friend. The 4 of us got to see it. The god of technology came in and just boomed us.
Little green screen.
Yes. We had a little problem. So we got to enjoy the show, but no one else did. Ha ha. So this is our do-over. This is our mulligan. And I'm going to let you get right to it because truthfully, it was a great show with a great message. Actually numerous great messages. And there's a lot of people watching tonight again in anticipation of us telling them that. That it was such a great show that they missed.
We'll try to bring the same.
The pressure is on.
The same magic and the same energy.
It's very hard to do it twice. Well, that's what she said last night. But no, that's not. I don't know why I said that, but I'm in a weird mood. It's I don't know why.
Well, I will attempt to do my best to repeat our last performance, which unfortunately was just.
That's what she said last night too.
The 3 of us.
Would you stop baiting me like that? God. That's just wrong, Colin. Stop it.
You can give me money later. Give me money
John
for
just
that.
said we're going to get kicked off YouTube. But what the hell?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll go viral, though, the first time. Anything. There's no such thing as bad advertising. You take over before I get us kicked off something else.
Well, no, I appreciate it. Actually, the conversation we were having last time was just, it's something that most people don't actually think of. It's what does your, and you kind of said it in your Facebook Live before, we went live, the live before live.
Yeah.
But what is your 70-year-old self? What should you be talking to your 40-year-old son or daughter? Or even reversed, what your 40-year-old self, what should you be talking to your 70-year-old parents about? Mm-hmm. And some of the topics are quite, alarming, to say the least, for and embarrassing. Mm-hmm. But others are very key to the transition as your parents age. So, there are things that affect day-to-day life and things that you need to know about well in advance before your parents hit that part of their life where they may become incapacitated or not able to make those decisions themselves.
And all too many times you just sort of don't think about it till it happens, and that's catastrophic.
No, and when part of what you guys will see in a little bit of the presentation is there are some staggering statistics about how unprepared we are mm-hmm. as both sons and daughters and mm-hmm. as seniors for that inevitable, not just the inevitable event, just the time period from 62 to 90.
Yeah, I know.
And I mean, people aren't dead.
Yeah.
They have a life. They have lives. They date. They have a sex life even, so there's a lot of things that, like I said, those are the uncomfortable conversations maybe as a son or daughter you don't want to have.
It's going to start over.
Yeah, you don't want to have the conversation with your parents about, but, that is part of that phase of their life, along with all the other kind of topics, financial, where you want to live, end of life care, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But they're all topics that you should, have an open mind and an open conversation with your parents about, because if not, you do end up getting that that episode, and you don't know what to do, and I can only relate to one of mine. And I said this story the last time we were here. One of my furthest back memories of my mom, and this is the things when I talk to seniors and families, I kind of relay this story. But one of my earliest memories, my father passed when I was 11 years old. And unfortunately, my dad did not have any that day, passed away at the age of 56, did not have anything planned or anything talked about with my mom. And unfortunately, I had to, one of my memories was watching my mom actually walking through Hubble Funeral Home on Indian Rocks Road, having to pick out my father's casket. Mm-hmm. And those are things that I think are ultra stressful. I knew what my mom went through. It's not something I'd ever want my son to go through, or my daughter to go through, or anyone's son or daughter to go through, mm-hmm. or let alone their spouse. It's very stressful. So those are all those little things.
And no one's escaping that.
No, they are not. Mm-hmm. So so there's really kind of, when you look at it, there's really 6 pillars to the 40-70 rule or 70-40 rule, depending on how you look at it, that impact the life. One of them is living choices. Kind of right up your alley. Where do you want to live? Where do you mm-hmm. want to stay in your home? Do you want to go into assisted living facility? Looking at skilled nursing, memory care, things of that nature. So where do you want to live? Your financial. Are you planning? How are you going to handle it? Do you want to travel? Are you planning for a company like me to be in your life? So you have to have those financial conversations, because a lot of folks that find and we've meandered back and forth in our world, where one side of my organization is a nonprofit where we take care of seniors who live in Medicaid nursing homes or around Christmas and Mother's and Father's Day. But as you age and you don't plan well, you end up losing or going through all of your money, and the only option is to be on Medicaid. So you have to have that conversation about and it's sort of morbid, but you have to figure out, how long am I going to live?
I know.
How long do I plan to save my money? Mm-hmm. Because if not, you could end up live longer than you have your money, and you might end up in a place you may not want to be.
That's the fate of the majority of people right now in this country. The majority, they just don't have they are going to outlive their savings. It's not an opinion, whether they know it or not. They are going to outlive their savings.
And you actually said it with the baby boomers. They're very ill prepared. For retirement years.
And most people get sick and die. They don't just die. The lucky ones just die.
Correct.
So
Yeah, it's very true.
It's true, and they're not prepared for sickness
No.
at that age.
I think people are used to talking about mortality now, but they're not used to talking about morbidity, which is a word that is not used as often with laymen's, but with professionals, which is how long you're sick and how long you stay sick until you die. Now, a lot of times you don't die. A lot of times you get better. Thank God. Modern science.
Modern medicine's fantastic.
Yeah, that's what the whole show's about. But morbidity, that's rough.
It is. And you guys hit the third pillar, which was actually health. How do you handle it? Because as you do age, a lot of folks, walk into being 62 and older and walking in with diabetes, high blood pressure, COPD. So you have to manage.
You were looking at my medical records?
Hit the top three, Michael?
I thought those were personal.
Yeah.
Isn't there HIPAA rules against that?
Share. You threw your sex life out, so I figured there was no
Nothing,
rules
yeah.
this evening.
Mental illness.
Yeah.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Okay.
So, you hit those diseases, you need to understand, your kids should understand, how do you manage
It's the truth.
those diseases? How are you managing those? How can I help you manage those? If that's just being involved in their life or helping them with their medication or diet reasons, whatever it might be, those are still, areas that you should have conversations with. The next one, maybe not so much that you want to know, but just relationship and dating. Because again, a lot of folks, it's a very large number of folks that are getting married after the age of 65.
That's right. Yeah.
It's one of the
No way to get around it.
demographics that is
We
growing.
see that in our mortgage world.
Yep. Sure
Yeah,
do.
absolutely.
So again, you have to be prepared that your mom or dad may have lost their spouse 10, 15 years ago, and now they're in a new phase of their life, and they've met someone, and they may end up getting married, and you're having a stepfather or stepmother at 40 or 50 years of age. So that's just another life challenge that you're going to need to have. And of course, that comes into conversations with the others: health, financial, living arrangements. That pillar can change a lot of different dynamics from a family. So, and then of course, some of the other ones which are more related to aging, which is driving. How are we going to handle it? I showed you the funny video, which hopefully maybe we'll be able to show this evening. But it's a realistic point of view, and especially in Pinellas County in Florida, we're so heavy, vehicle related. We don't have a lot of public transportation, so you have to drive, or it's really tough to get around. Yeah. But that's another topic you should really have a conversation about with
That's
your
a rough one.
mom or dad.
I don't want to take more time because I want you to. What you're speaking about is so important to every family.
Correct.
But the driving thing is sensitive. We talked about it on our practice session 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
That has a lot to do with their pride when they take when a son or a daughter has to look at their mom and dad and go, "We don't think you should drive anymore. You're not safe."
Correct.
That's a rough conversation. I had that with my dad, and it was rougher than any other conversation, probably.
Correct. Well, what you end up doing is you end up taking little pieces of their independence away. And driving is, what was the first thing we wanted when we were 15 and 16?
Our driver's license.
My driver's license.
Yeah.
Our independence. That was our way of getting away from our parents and having independence at 16. Well, if you can imagine that our angst at that young of an age, but then turn that around into your 70-year-old mother or father, and looking at them going, hey, that independence that you had, that you could go anywhere, see anyone, see your friends. I need to take that away from you.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a heavy burden. It's a tough burden, but it's unfortunately, especially in Pinellas County and Florida, it's imperative to have that conversation, because the roads are a lot more dense. With other traffic, a lot of other motorcycles, a lot of things that could cause a lot of
10
problems.
million cars. 10 million cars in Florida. Is that amazing? And 9 million of them with their left turn signal on all the time.
All the time. Exactly.
It's very difficult to find out where they're going.
We are definitely not a transient state, but we are definitely we get a lot of transplants.
Yeah, absolutely.
To our area.
Well, it's a great place to live.
Absolutely,
It really
is.
It really is.
All you gotta do is walk outside this week, and you understand.
Yeah, it's a great place to raise a family.
You understand why?
It's a great place to raise a family, and then there's the total opposite spectrum. It sounds terrible. It's a great place to die. It's a great place to live your last years and die.
Yep. And that transition, good transition.
Thank you.
Very good transition.
I could be a host
we
of
didn't
a
even
TV show.
we didn't even practice this. Well, and the last pillar of the 40-70 rule is actually end of life. And to me, that's probably the hardest But the most stressful
Yeah.
ones to me out of all of these conversations for me, and being a caregiver myself for my mom when I lost her in '06, and even for my grandmother when she passed away in the early 2000s, and that end of life is a good conversation, but a tough conversation. But it also is a great one to have, because once you know what that path is, it's a lot less stress. So if you know your parents or your mom or dad wants to be buried in this, or they want to be cremated, or if they want whatever Elvis playing at their funeral procession, it is, because when you bring in family dynamics and you don't have these things planned, unfortunately, our experience is a lot of families have grifts against each other.
All families do.
And it's just over some of the, pardon my language, some of the stupidest things.
Yeah.
Mom's dress. What is she going to wear? The music that they play. And when I talk to seniors, plan it out. Do it yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to be, that's it. Exactly. It's your party. It's your last hurrah to do it the way you want to do it, and it's your life, and it's your money per se. Even it's, if you do it, you write your last chapter. Don't leave it up to your sons or daughter to worry about it. Because being a son of having to go through that, it's not a fun rodeo. It really isn't. It's not fun to have to figure it all out. And you never do it right.
No. And you always question yourself too.
Even many years later.
Yep, there's no doubt about it.
If you did it right, if you did everything, and actually you asked the question, it's kind of a humbling question, but you ask it, would your parents be proud of me?
Yeah.
Would they be proud of what I did? And of course, no mom or dad's probably going to say no, they're not, but it is still that question.
Absolutely.
that you have with it. So, and then actually, up on the screen is one of the statistics with it is, and this kind of goes to what you said early, was, over 2/3 of families, they don't have that conversation before it's too late.
That's right.
So only 1/3, if you can imagine that, of all those 65 and older families, only 1/3 of them actually have had that conversation about end of life.
I'm surprised it's that big.
I would imagine that they have the conversations, but then it falls by the wayside even after the conversation, because I personally have had this conversation with my brother and my mother, and we still haven't had the full conversation with a final result.
Correct. It's the plan.
What I mean? So it's hard. It's a difficult conversation to have.
Outside of personally, outside of the sex conversation, I think this probably is it's a morbid conversation, and I think people are afraid of it because it is a final conversation. Excuse me, but I do believe that it also can be and as I said previously, it can also be take off the most anxiety, the most stress
when it's done
off of yourself and the family. So then you can just focus on mom or dad, and now so that it's almost like you're setting that aside or setting it up on the shelf, going, that's taken care of. So once that topic is done, it's done. Everything's said, done, paid for. There's no stress for it. So then it's just enjoying what time is left, or it could be 10, 20, 30 years.
That's right.
But we know it's taken care of.
Right.
And you know what? As a son, I would appreciate it, because my mom did a little bit, but I had to fill in the blanks, and it was tough.
Very tough.
Tough filling the blanks. And you're in a situation with your father. You had your father. I think we all could relate to a situation where we wish we'd have known more.
I think again that's why. Again, when having you on the third time, and I hope one of many times more, this topic just there's so many topics that can go. Like we could bring on somebody, which we're going to, from a funeral home to talk about the expensive, how expensive funerals got. But you know what? If you're wealthy, it doesn't make a difference. And you could talk about long-term care insurance and say, oh, you didn't get it. Well, I have millions of dollars in the bank. I'm going to self-insure. Every topic that we bring up, every topic in life, there are certain people that are exempt from it.
Correct.
Except for these topics. Until you figure out how not to die, everything you just brought up.
Correct.
It doesn't make a difference if you're a millionaire, billionaire, on Medicare, Medicaid, black, white, Jewish, Christian. Everything you're talking about is going to happen to every family.
Correct. We all are going to experience.
That's what's amazing about your topic.
It is. We're all going to experience it. Yeah. It is social and economically irrelevant who you are. You're going to go through
Yes.
these stages with yourself as a parent, or with your son or daughter, or they're going to go through it with you. So it doesn't matter. You're going to end up going through these pillars.
That's right.
One way or another with it. Well, and the other statistic that's sort of tough to swallow, which kind of goes along with the 1/3, is as people can see on the screen, 70% of conversations are prompted by an event. So it's an episode.
That's true.
So we don't talk about things until mom or dad has an episode.
Yeah.
Well, the bad part about it, they can still see it.
They can still see it.
They're
oh, yeah.
seeing that on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're John
Well,
the
I'm
Magic
looking
Man.
at that one, and
John
so
the
is
Magic
us,
Man
so-
helped us. There you go. See?
John's got it up
Yeah,
there so they can see it.
he's-
John's like magic.
He's on
Like
it.
sometimes I hear his voice in my ears. It's really amazing.
Yeah, he knows how to get in your head.
I know. He's like Santa Claus.
Thanks.
He knows when you're asleeping.
But and this one is actually staggering, especially from your background, financial and things of that nature. This one's staggering because if your parent becomes incapacitated, I mean, I can give a few horror stories of just not being able to pay their rent, not being able to pay their bills
Absolutely.
because they're incapacitated and they had no power of attorney. They had no, financial surrogate, for lack of a better term, let alone some of them even have a healthcare surrogate. So now they're really in a bind where they had no one representing themselves, and they had no way to pay their bills. And by the time they got through this, all through the process to get someone, they may have recovered or may not have recovered. But by then,
Damage is done.
yeah, the damage is done. It could be from credit, it could be from foreclosure, whatever the case may be. Now, there's lots of ways to do it, but not everybody has the wherewithal or the ability. And now that's something that might differ in the social economic that you just
Yes.
talked about.
Yes.
The more affluent folks will know who to call. But us average Joes, we may not know who to reach out to help solve this problem. The bad part is that most of these conversations happen because of a tragic event.
That's right.
And that's
was in my family.
And that's really the theme of this, is to have the conversation prior to that tragic event. So, and I think you can see the talking is difficult portion of this, which is it runs the same statistics. 7 out of 10 families hadn't had adequate conversations. So that's your 2/3, and then the 3 most difficult, which you could probably guess, is sex life, money, and where to live.
Right.
Surprisingly, taking away the car isn't in one of the most difficult. It's the house is actually for me, the hardest conversation is deciding where mom or dad may live, and I think more moms, and for me, than it is dads.
I agree with that.
Simply because moms have that emotional connection to the home, because it could be the family home of 10, 20, 30, 50,
Right.
60 years. So not only have they seen their husband, and their marriage prosper in that home, they've seen their kids, they've been raised there, even now grandchildren are coming in, and now suddenly, you have a son or daughter, swoop in and go, it's time to move.
Yeah.
We're going to move you in, into an assisted living facility
City
or
Oaks Rest Home, yeah.
yeah, and we won't, because for whatever reason, and that's a tough one, because that's, again, you go back to your dad and his cars, independence. I think a lot of folks, their moms are really tied to their homes.
Yes.
I would agree with that.
With it, and because that's where their memories are.
Yeah.
Especially maybe their spouse even passed away there. Again, they have such an emotional connection to the home, so that's a very difficult conversation. So have it. Don't just assume mom will wake up and after an event or an episode and go, sure, I'll move from my, even a modest 1,500 square foot home into a 400 square foot, even a really nice assisted living.
Right.
It's a change.
It's a big change.
It's a huge change. You go from complete independence to not having your independence any longer, because someone's always able to walk in your room. You may or may not have a roommate. There's a lot of
Eating even in a beautiful dining room. I've been in some
Absolutely.
facilities that are just gorgeous.
Absolutely.
But still, suddenly you're eating with 200 people instead of one.
correct.
Right.
That's a change.
It is.
And you're eating what you're being served, not what
Yes.
you asked for.
Yeah.
You asked your wife for, or your
Yeah.
husband, or whatever.
Correct. It is, and so there's a lot of things tied to it. So I can understand how these topics are kind of tough to deal with from it. But and I think you probably have would agree too is family dynamics. One of the largest things is what's probably the one thing lacking in most families from this particular topic.
One thing, probably the money conversation, but
Well, actually, even
Knowledge.
I'll take it. I'll add on to it. Communication, just in
yeah.
general, just communication. Unfortunately, over about 2/3 of families actually state that they've not had adequate conversation on any of these topics, which you would think family would be able. Well, maybe not. You'd think families would be able to communicate and be able to articulate what either as a daughter. What do you want for your dad? Because this isn't about, some of this isn't about what do you want from dad. Some people view this that way.
Yeah.
That, it's what do you want? This is sort of
What do I want for my dad?
Correct. Because, you're here to, it is a role reversal. You're here to enable him to enjoy, what time he has left. Same thing, loved one, whoever it might be. Mm-hmm. It's not about what you need to get done. It's really about what you need to do to help them enjoy their life. So some of this is ease of mind for you, but it's also ease of mind for them. Because I can tell you about my personal, my mom worried about all of this. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted my mom to have things discussed and talked about so she didn't have to worry. She wouldn't have to worry about me. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'll be okay. I'm more worried. It's a strange role reversal.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm more worried about you now than you should worry about me. I'm good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Isn't it that reversal of roles?
It is. But being the baby in 6, it was really hard to break my mom of that one.
Yeah, for sure.
I was still the baby. No matter how big I got, no matter how successful I got,
Because you're a boy.
I was still her baby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the baby too, but I still get involved with all the decisions. I do all the decisions.
Yeah, well, that's, and it sort of fell to me too on a lot of those topics. But it is tough. And I think when you talk about family dynamics, part of this is, it's tough. It is a tough conversation, especially if you have siblings, you always don't agree, and you don't agree on a lot of different topics. You don't
That's
agree
for sure.
on, what mom should be buried in potentially, or what music should be playing, or worse, I want my inheritance now versus mom or dad needs that money to live on, retire on, where to live. Mm-hmm. A lot of family dynamics can come out, and what does that end up with?
Arguing, breaking up with the family. That's some bad stuff
It's
out there.
bad.
Yeah,
It is.
So part of this to me as well is a benefit to just getting it out there. It's almost ripping the Band-Aid off
I was just
in a way.
It is, yeah.
And because I'd rather. Again, maybe it's a guy's point of view versus a female's point of view, but I would rather have the Band-Aid ripped off and have the conversation to know what my mom or dad was thinking and wishing to have done, or what my brothers and sisters wanted as well, and have it on the table so we know. So, because I think sometimes when we get involved in that end of life scenario, it again, it's a role reversal, but when it should be all about your mom or dad, somehow it doesn't become all about your mom or dad. It's all about my sister Susie or my brother Joe, or someone's hurt. My feelings are hurt. And instead about enjoying what's left.
What's best for them.
Correct.
The parents.
And what time is left, and enjoying it. Listen. I hope when my son and daughter, if I have the chance, I hope they're not discussing and arguing or anything. I hope they're enjoying just being with dad. As long as they can. That's my wish. It's because having children later in life, it's a hugely different perspective, I might add, than having them a little younger. So I cherish those moments. I have a 2-year-old daughter and a going to be 4-year-old son. My 2-year-old is going on like 12, I think, because she's already in the little sidebar. She's already in the no, I can do it myself phase.
That's a woman thing. Even it's
I can do it myself, and I know what I'm doing. And my son is sweet as anything, but he's my dad. He's going to be tall and thin. I'm not sure, he got no gene of mine.
Does he have hair?
Yes, he has hair.
That's good.
Yeah, he has hair. Yeah, my two little ones, I started a little later in life, but yeah, it's a different perspective. So
Much.
with family dynamics. But anyways, the back to the 40/70. It's just all it is just your 40-year-old self talking to your 70-year-old parent and approaching those things. How do you do it? What do you do? 'Cause
Opening the conversation is very hard.
yes. What are you doing? And of those topics, what are other things that you can you can talk about? So don't be afraid, folks. There is something out there for you to use. It's actually, and I showed it to you last show. It's about a 40 almost a 50-page booklet, and it's just an action plan for successful aging, and it goes through each one of those 6 pillars that we talked about, and it actually has conversation starters in them. So it actually goes through where you're able to, strategize on the conversation, go with the plan. You can find expert advice. How do you handle your home if you want to keep it?
Right.
How do you want to handle long-term care insurance? How do you want to handle, qualifying for Medicare or Medicaid, things of that nature? Research so you understand. Maybe if you're dealing with an early onset of Alzheimer's, understand what the disease is. So you need to go out and research, because you're going to have phases and stages that disease may go through, even if it's just COPD or diabetes, any of those. So you need to do some research there just to educate yourself.
Yeah.
And then of course there's thought provoking, and you'll see in this workbook, it's a theme. It's called ACT. It's assess, consider, and talk. So it's assess the situation. Consider the alternatives, or consider the options, and talk it through. So it's a really nice acronym for people to remember with it. But it's just ACT. Assess, consider, and talk about it.
That applies to a whole bunch of things.
Yeah,
Really
I'm pretty sure
does.
that rule could be applied to life in
general.
How to be kind to your fellow man or
Yeah.
woman in general.
Consider
with it.
before you act, possibly.
Yeah, there's on ham. I can openly say I've inserted foot in mouth more times
Yeah, me
than
too.
I care to admit.
No doubt. Me too.
So it's
You just did it today.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Hey, Lee. Hey, you did it, and you did it the last show.
I did.
Our first folly,
I
or you
did.
guys'
Yeah,
first
that's right.
folly.
Yeah.
Which was a
No,
great.
I do it pretty
great
often,
way.
and it's accepted at this point by most people that know me. Just eventually he'll say the right thing. Just let him keep going.
Yeah, or my wife just tunes me out, and just
Yeah.
chalks it up to it's Colin.
Yeah.
It's just him. And the last thing the book does, it actually just gives special circumstances and tips for those. Big one, as we talked about, blended families. And so it's kind of a movie theme there, but it is true.
It's very true.
To a degree, I'm a blended family. I'm blessed that I met Julie, and I married into her great family. But she had 3 kids before she met me.
Hers, yours,
And
ours.
Correct. So it's definitely an interesting, and that adds another dynamic into the whole conversation with it. So it's definitely something to to consider especially with dementia, because it's a dementia and Alzheimer's. They may remember you and they may not remember me, and so it's going to be a tough conversation.
That's my dad has
Yeah.
dementia, so
You know that
I'm
quite-
very familiar with that, and sometimes it could be heartbreaking to the grandkids too, because sometimes he'll remember the grandkids, and then sometimes he won't, because they were littler when he started losing part of his memory as of like 5 years ago, and it's just gotten continually worse. So sometimes he remembers them, sometimes, and that's very hurtful to the kids.
Yeah, it's a tough.
It's really tough.
I think it's tough for everyone across the board, because a lot of times you end up finding your loved one, sometimes stuck in a time error. And we've had a number of clients that but the beautiful part is if you know where they are, you can surround them with those memories. You can help them work through some of those scary moments with some redirection, things of that nature. So there's a lot, and our caregivers are fantastic. I mean, by definition, if you're a caregiver, family caregiver, you're awesome by
Yeah,
by
we
nature.
talked about that. They're
Yeah.
amazing human beings.
Yes,
Just amazing.
You have to have a heart of gold to be a caregiver. I didn't realize that until, after my brother's death, and what I realized what it took, a toll on him, being my grandmother's, but having just sitting back and looking at it going, wow. I mean, that was 5-6 years of his life that was on hold. So yeah, it's a personal thing, but I view that way of anyone, because we find family caregivers, all the time that are just stressed, and they give everything, and their life revolves around their loved one, and it's tough. It's very tough. Well, I'm preaching. I'm preaching to the choir.
Having to go there every day or every other day, and then my brother goes, and it's hard. But we want to make sure he's taken care of too. So, having to go there is very important to make sure, because sometimes it's not always the best care.
No.
No.
Well, whoever the family caregiver, if they're not at the top of their game,
Right.
then it's not the best care. And then, as we've had conversations, Michael and I, then that's a bad thing, because suddenly the caregiver gets in an episode, or possibly even passes before their loved one, which is to me a catastrophic event, because it's everything was planned around the care for the other one, for the one spouse, and the other spouse or the sibling just deteriorates way too fast.
And it happens much more often than people think.
Yes.
I learned that just on the show with certain guests.
Correct.
I mean, I thought it happened and how sad it is, but when I was told the statistics, I was like, it just gave me the chills.
It's a staggering statistic of how many significant others, be it sons, daughters, siblings, but of caregivers, spouses mainly, that pass before, simply because of the stress and the health-related issues that they go through, that they don't get taken care of, because their sole focus is their loved one.
Yeah.
It is a tough thing. So.
And it's up to the kids to make sure that they're taken care of. I've noticed that, I've talked more to my mom now and asked her how she's feeling instead of how my dad's feeling.
Yeah.
Because of
That
the show.
takes time. That
you
takes,
know?
yeah.
Because I think that a little while, she starts to feel not jealous, but maybe, like everybody's so worried about my dad that they're not worried about
I'm
her.
still here, hey.
And,
Yeah.
She's an awesome woman, and I want her to feel completely loved. But my gosh, she's wearing herself ragged,
Correct.
going to and from the nursing home, sometimes at night. She's 81 years old and she's driving. I mean, I give her credit.
Correct.
Because she's really hanging in there, but my gosh, I'm scared for her too,
Well, a lot of folks, and that's how kind of, when you understand the disease potentially that your loved one has, I hate to say that you sort of, once you understand it, you don't have to worry about it as much. You understand COPD,
right.
you understand dementia or Alzheimer's, and to me, dad is in his place. So you have to watch for the changes, but other than that, if there really isn't changes, dad's going to be okay. So yeah, to your point, a lot of times, we encourage people, focus on the caregiver.
That's right.
Because they're the ones that aren't known. They don't have a diagnosis.
And they could be holding it back on purpose because they're the strong one.
Correct.
Everybody's depending on them.
Correct.
Yep.
And that's a huge burden to carry on it. So again, even in this rule, if you take your approach and expand it, the whole family should have a conversation. So it may not just be about the loved one that is sick or is aging. It's also in consideration, dad, what happens, what do you want to happen to mom, or mom, what would you want to happen? So you really should include all aspects of the family, not just the one that it has a diagnosis or the one that might be ill, because their illness is going to affect their spouse as much as the illness is going to affect them.
Absolutely.
And if we can keep that in mind, and we apply some of these type of resources out there, you can have a better transition. So if mom or dad does pass, then the sons or daughters know what mom's wishes are and what moms want, and we can make that transition. But if you take that person out and only focus, you tend to find, we end up being a statistic.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I would think that a lot of the caregivers themselves need home care, because
Yes.
they're too busy giving the actual person the care that then the house falls apart. There's no cooking. There's, it's a lot to deal with.
Correct.
So I think they need it more.
Yes.
One of these times when you come back, you got to bring a couple of your home care people with you, because it just made me think there's probably a whole subject, or at least one show on a caregiver's family and what they sacrifice when someone in their family is doing that for a living. The emotional, never thought about that till you just said something like that. But these people are so giving, so loving.
Correct.
There's only so much love to give.
Correct.
And I don't want to say is their family suffering. That's not the right word. But when you're giving out that much love and you're coming home mentally exhausted, dealing with medication, sickness, possible death, I know they get attached to the patients. I know that because I've experienced it.
Absolutely.
What kind of effect is that having on the caregiver's loved ones at home when mom or dad are coming home at 11 o'clock at night going, somebody I just took care of for 4 months just passed? They have to be pretty special people too. The caregiver's family.
Absolutely.
We need to do a show with a couple of your people on how it affects their lives.
It is unique.
That's a show.
It is unique because you'll see a ramping up of as a client becomes ill, or like your dad, they may recognize their caregiver. Well, when he or she is having an episode, at 9, 10 o'clock at night, your mom or your spouse they're gonna reach out, and of course a lot of caregivers give their cell phones out regardless if we ask them not to try to protect them from this, but they may get a phone call just to get on the phone to have a conversation just with someone that they might be able to break them out of that mode or that phase they're in. But yeah, we find a lot of our caregivers going well above and beyond and going at all, hours, weekends.
Absolutely.
Times they shouldn't be going off the clock when they really shouldn't. But the problem, it's not the problem. Their heart.
Yeah,
they're
not
thinking,
a problem, but it is.
It's they're thinking with their heart, which is absolutely what we hire them for, is their heart. Those are the compassion, the people we want to have with it, and I want our families to have. And if I was a family, I would want a caregiver that way.
That's right.
So it is an endearing quality we have, but it does affect some things when they're the only ones that are able to pull it. But to your point, they do, because they'll go from a couple of hours a day to possibly moving into 24-hour care, where they're staying with the family 2 or 3 days and then going home.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know where I would look it up, and I don't know if I want to look it up, but I wouldn't be surprised if statistics for divorces may be a little higher for caregivers. Their own mortality may be a little lower, not only because of the emotional strain, but I've always wondered this about caregivers, including doctors and nurses. They're with sick people all the time. Why aren't they always sick?
Correct.
And granted, a lot of people have cancer and things like that, or Alzheimer's that's not catching. But many times it's not. They're treating people with sepsis. They're treating people with infections, and yet they're back the next day, and they're back the next day. It's just amazing to me.
They are amazing people. Just the resiliency is amazing, because they will be hiding a very terrible disease or some sort of diagnosis, and they will get up every day, and you will never know it until that episode occurs, and then everyone look. I had no idea. They are just that good at carrying that burden for their loved one, and it's definitely a generational thing.
Yes,
and I know you love The Greatest Generation, but it is. There's a lot of folks out there still from that generation that are caregivers.
Yep,
and they have that very, very prideful thing about taking care of my spouse.
Yep, no doubt about it.
Be it a female or a male, but taking care of it.
It's funny when people talk about The Greatest Generation, they lean towards the man because of World War II and Tom Brokaw's greatest book, the book, which was incredible, The Greatest Generation, the movies, Saving Private Ryan. So when you think about The Greatest Generation, you do lean towards man thinking. But the women of The Greatest Generation were the best mothers in the world. When they took care of the family when their men went to war. None of them worked back then, but they went to work in factories making bombs and bullets and guns and tanks. The Greatest Generation woman, the Greatest Generation mom, just as tough as the Greatest Generation dad. They often don't get the credit, but that generation was just, well, they were the greatest generation. There's just no way to get around it.
Those ladies know how to take care of business.
Yeah, boy, do they.
Say it that way.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
With it, but just in, because I know we're getting close, but a few last little tidbits for people to use. If they do go to the, and it's really a nice thing. There's a nice website. You can go to caregivingstress.com, or it's 4070talk.com right there on the top with it. But if you want to have, and it's pretty convoluted diagram, but it does help you get through the whole conversation of just the conversation tree. So it does help if some people are visual. This would drive me crazy. Mm-hmm. But some people are visual and they want to be able to see how things interact. If Dad talks about this, I can transition to this conversation. If he asks this or says this, I can transition to this other pillar of the conversation. So it does help someone kind of that has a more linear view. And then there's some videos out there at the 4070 talk.com.
And you can download the book itself that I had here the last time.
You can actually download both the marketing brochure itself and the whole 47-page workbook that you can go through and have those things done.
Go to Colin's website, please, and download this. I don't care if you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or if you're 70 or 80, download it. Go to your son or your daughter the next day and go, why aren't we talking about this? One of you needs to do it.
Yes, and just for we've had a pretty heavy conversation. If John wants to play that video, it might be a good time.
Can we play that 30-second one?
Might be a little funsy to.
I loved it when you sent it to me. All right, we're going to put that up. Yeah, do we get to see it too?
Dad?
Yeah?
I've been meaning to talk to you.
Yeah? About what?
About the car.
What about the car?
The dent.
I just bumped the mailbox when I was backing out yesterday.
It's happened to you a lot lately, huh?
I don't know if it's happening a lot.
Look, I'm concerned for your safety, Dad. I think we should explore some alternate modes of transportation for you.
You're always your parents' kid, but it's never too early to have the tough conversations. Visit 4070talk.com and have the conversation today.
Obviously, that's a little different than 4070 there, but it definitely gets the
it's
point
just
across.
It's a delicate conversation, but I liked it because it adds a whole lot of levity to it.
Yeah,
and the kids are great, and I happen to know the people in the video, so it is.
Really?
It is kind of funny, with it. The gentleman actually works for Homestead Inc. in Omaha, Nebraska, and he plays a lot of great roles. He was the Dos Equis guy for a number of years, so he's a good guy, and those are his kids. But it is a real world conversation, being lighthearted, because it is difficult conversations to have.
Difficult.
With driving and sex and financial and living and health and end of life.
Humor makes everything better.
There's not one topic in there that I'm ruining. Ooh.
Yeah,
I want to.
Let's talk about that.
We were talking, beginning of the show. We're having a little fun, a little talk, different things. But these are not any topics that people are just rushing home to. Hey, Dad, let's talk about your sex life. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were sharing our sex life beforehand, but
you were leading me on.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure
you were leading me on.
Stop leading him on.
You were leading. You were coming close to talking dirty to me, pretty much. So I had to respond.
I'm pretty sure right now, if my 12-year-old daughter was watching, she would not want to hear about anybody's father's sex life or mother's sex life personally. So.
No, again, it's just so many mental and emotional different ways to look at this. In my particular case, my father was my hero. So, I mean, just literally my own personal Superman. So to get to that point where you have to talk about his mortality or not being the best driver I know or the strongest man I know or the best bowler or the best billiard player, it's very hard to look at them and suddenly yourself realize they are not that anymore.
Correct.
And have they realized that? Do you want to be the person to make them realize that? That's even worse. It's just on an emotional level. I mean, there's got to be.
It's devastating.
Yeah, there's got to be. If there's how many people are in this country? 350 million, something like that.
A lot.
There's got to be 350 million different versions of why you don't want to talk to your dad or your mom depending on your upbringing, your religion, the part of the country you were brought up in, where you're close with your mom and dad. Not everybody is, but still, it's just amazing to think about that you become the parent.
Correct.
At a certain point, and you don't think about that until usually in our life, or at least with my mom, a healthcare professional said, you have to now assume the parental role. Never, I considered myself fairly intelligent. Never thought about that till somebody in your field actually said it to me.
Yeah, I've had a couple of I'll call friends that have had the luck of being able to have their parents have everything situated and have had that conversation well in advance. And I've always felt that they have a head start on a lot of things, and mainly it's just the fact that their sole focus can now be on enjoying,
Yes.
their parents, and not having to worry about, well, if this happens, what do I do? They've already had that conversation, and everything's laid out. And again, you don't have to be a millionaire to have this conversation. You can be, as broke paycheck to paycheck. It's still about, what do you want me to do, or how do you want to handle certain things when certain events occur? So it really doesn't. It's not aligned towards someone that has wealth or knowledge or anything else. It's just a design to help families understand what mom or dad's wishes are, or even what sons or daughters' wishes are for their parents. So again, I just stress this is not just for a select group of
for
folks.
everyone.
There's not one person that I've met or know, or any client that's ever came through Home Instead that's ever asked us to sit down that this has not been applicable in some fashion with it. Even if they don't have a son or daughter, it's still things they should be talking about, even to their spouse with it. Because I know spouses that haven't even had it. And my wife and I are guilty. I tell her all the time, we need to have a better plan, because events happen and things happen. So I don't want to leave our children wondering or guessing.
That's right.
And you have more options when you're younger.
Yes.
You have a lot more options when you're younger than to wait when you're 70.
Correct.
But so
The only thing I could think of that struck me as you was talking, again, no one is left out of this conversation, no one, every week of life. But I'm used to thinking like this. I would say, though, that lower income people, it may even be more important for them to have this conversation, because if you are wealthy, you can write a big check for a big funeral, and you can, we didn't have long-term care, but it's going to cost $10,000 a month to keep mom in a nice facility. No problem, I'll write a check. Not that it's not important for wealthy people, it's important for everybody. But as you were speaking, I'm thinking for lower income people, and in today's world, lower income people, I'm not talking about people living below the poverty line. I'm talking about people that can't shell out $10,000 a month for a nice home for mom.
Correct.
That's 90% of the United States of America.
Correct.
People, it's so different. You just got to have this plan. You got to have it.
And I will say, to add on to your topic there, or your segment there, I think the lower income, or just moderate, if you just want to call it the middle class, with it. Even if it's not about the money or the things, it's more about the knowledge, and it's more about the sanity to know exactly what needs to occur when something, and I gotta go back to just the anxiety and the stress that doesn't exist when you have the plan, or at least the majority of the plan, taken care of. I mean, obviously there might be some finite things in there that you might not be able to plan for, but if mom or dad wants to be cremated, or they want to be buried, and you go back and you follow a plan like this, so what are the costs, how are we going to get there? So, and if you are middle class, how do we plan to get to this goal, or this plan that you've outlined? Because to your point, it may take a couple of years to either save or expend when you need to do it this year, and then we're going to do this next year, so on and so forth. Or also plan for in-home care, or nursing, skilled nursing, or assisted living, or memory care. You need to assess how are we going to get to that end. I hate to say it, end game, but to that end game. But also look at it is the end game, but how are you going to have a lot of fun in the middle?
That's right. You don't want the end game for your parents to be nothing but suffering.
Correct.
You know, who wants to have these conversations when they're in bed with the hospice person or the in-home? You should have had that
Well,
conversation
you already have
years
enough.
ago.
You already have enough coming at you with the inevitable.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is start having the conversations about, so Dad, do you want to be buried or cremated, or do you want to do this, or wherever where do you want to be buried? Here or there. What do you want to be buried in? Do you want a viewing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just it's a shot after shot.
We have about 45 seconds left, and I will tell you that we as a family were so ill prepared with my mom's death that we were we were very good prepared when my dad went. When he went, I made 2 phone calls, and then we concentrated on grief and love and taking care of each other. 2 phone calls, and everything was set. But that's
Right.
only because we was so bad when Mom passed away. We weren't prepared for anything. It's really amazing.
It is. Is it?
Well,
and
with
you
a
can
little
tell the
less than-
difference.
Oh, yeah. With a little less than, almost 20 seconds left. Thank you, as always.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Ms. Co-Hostess.
Yes.
I would like to bring a couple of your caretakers in.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we can fit 5 people at this table, but we'll
figure it out.
John will figure it out and talk to them and thank them, but really get an angle of how this is affecting their lives. 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. We got to go, but we're going to have
Bye-bye.
a great show next week. Bye.